Welcome back, everyone. And if you haven't popped your name and your AVA, just love to know what region you're calling in from. So again, my name is Jeanette Tan. I'm consulting CFO and advanced certified QuickBooks Pro advisor with my business QB Winery Solutions. And today we're going to talk about entering samples, pours, and shrinkage. Now the samples, pours, and shrinkage are part is our one of our fundamental 5 steps. Oops. And again, let's revisit the fundamental 5, which is the 5 systems that need to be in place, or the 5 processes that need to be in place in order for QuickBooks to work for a small winery. So the fundamental 5 are: use an effective chart of accounts, set up inventory the right way, track sales by channel, select a method to enter the POS sales, or really shopping cart or sales that are captured outside of QuickBooks, and then record samples, pours, and shrinkage. And it seems as though people poop out before they get to the samples, pours, and shrinkage. And since so much wine is given away in the wine industry, I mean, this is just a fact of life, I thought this would be a good topic to revisit to make sure that folks are tracking this. We want to track this because if we don't track the samples, pours, and shrinkage, then your inventory is going to be off. So even if you set up inventory the right way and you're doing all these other steps, you're still not going to have accurate information unless you do this last step of recording the samples, pours, and shrinkage. We would like to track the expense, the cost of the samples and pours as an expense, but that's not a required step, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But if you have a winery with a lot of staff, you want to monitor how much wine is your tasting room giving away. We actually had to put one winery, the tasting room crew at one winery on a pours diet because they were giving away way too much wine. They were opening up some reserve bottles, giving the guest a sample, and then at the end of the day going, oh, well, I guess I'll take this bottle home tonight. And we had to cut that off. The other step, so the samples and pours, that I think y'all understand what that is, but shrinkage also needs to be entered. So shrinkage is the entry that we, the shrinkage is what we call the difference between the inventory that QuickBooks says versus your actual physical count. So again, just a fact of life in the wine industry, wine goes missing. It happens. Sometimes there's keying errors. You put in the wrong vintage year for a particular SKU, but folks, it's a small bottle. It's easy to hide, and you want to have procedures in place to track your shrinkage so that your staff can see that you're tracking shrinkage. The way that shrinkage is tracked is you take a physical count, and we recommend you do this minimum at the end of every quarter. So March 31st, June 30th, October 31st, and of course, December. We do the shrinkage, you do the physical count because you do it 4 times a year because no one in the wine industry can count. One of the wineries that I worked with, which I know had very dedicated, very competent people on the team, they still had miscounts every quarter. So miscounts happen, and if you do it 4 times a year, you're going to catch your miscounts. Also, again, if your staff sees that you're counting the wine, then at least they know that you're paying attention to it. And you need to true up your inventory in QuickBooks. So let's go to the minimum steps to do this procedure of tracking your samples and pours. So first of all, you want to have one class designated for the freebies. And I'm going to flip to a QuickBooks file in just a minute once I just kind of go through this list here. You want to use the same items for your samples. You're not going to create a separate set of items for the samples. You want to create some customer jobs to identify the purpose, and the minimum customers you want to create are samples, pours, and shrinkage. You want to create a procedure to capture this info in real time. And then the optional step is to enter a journal entry to reclass from COGS down to expenses. So let's go to QuickBooks, and so I can show you what these steps mean. And today I'm going to actually use QuickBooks Online because there's nothing significantly different in QuickBooks Online than in QuickBooks Desktop. So until I get frustrated with QuickBooks Online, we'll just kind of stay here. So we're going to run a P&L. So remember, this is my sample file. My data is in 2017 and 2018. So I've run a report for 2017 and 2018. Now you're going to run a P&L. Let me just, let's go back here. Let's do this from the beginning. So I'm going to run a profit and loss report. I'm going to run it for 2017. 010117. 1230. Now I'm going to cheat here because normally you would want to do, actually, let me just go to the end of the year. And then I'm going to display my columns by class. I'm going to run my report. And so what you can see here for this file, they've chosen to call their class for their freebies depletions, but you can call it whatever you want. You can call it samples. It doesn't matter. The important thing is that you use this class consistently. Now, this particular file has chosen to do the journal entry to reclass the COGS down to the expense accounts. So let me show you what it looks like without that entry. This file also only does it once a year, so it's easy for me to do this. So when you have entered your samples and pours, what you're going to see in your depletion class is $0 sales, but you're going to have a cost of goods and possibly a cost of goods for merchandise. And this is totally fine to just leave it like this. You don't have to do the journal entry to reclass this. All right, now the next thing that we want to look at are your, again, your items. You're not going to create any different item for your samples and pours. What you're going to do is you're going to enter a sales receipt. So let me show you. Let's see, let's go here. So here is a sales receipt. So there's a sales receipt, and I'm going to pick one of my customers. So I'm here on my, look, I got a customer tab open. Okay, so here I'm on my customer list, and down at the bottom, again, we like to make we like to repurpose the customer names, and we'll put a ZZ in front of them when we're repurposing customer names. That way that pushes them down to the end of the list. So in this case, I've got a ZZHG, which, stands for Heavenly Grape, which is the name of my file. And I have my pours, my samples, and my shrinkage. So these are the three the three customer job names, the minimum ones that you want to have. This file also tracks events, it tracks employees, it tracks donations, and some other things. Okay, so let's go back to our sales receipt. So my sales receipt, I'm going to enter the customer that I want for this, for these samples. And I'm going to enter my product service, which is an item in desktop in QuickBooks Online. It's called product service. I'm going to put my quantity, and I'm going to put a $0 rate, and I'm going to put my class. So you're going to list all of your wines. This is going to be a $0 sales receipt, but because you've entered a quantity, it's going to remove it from inventory. So this is not going to affect your P&L. Well, it's not going to affect your revenue at all. It's a $0 transaction. So I'm going to close this out, and you're going to do this for all of your samples and pours. And of course, in QuickBooks Online, I can't scroll forward, so we're just going to have to pick another one. So here's another one. So these are the pours that I tracked, and so yep, those are all the wines. And again, $0 sales receipt on the depletion class. Now, if you give samples to your distributors. So here's a distributor. So let's say you're sending out a case of wine to, or say, a couple cases of wine to a distributor that they're going to pay for, but you're also including some wine to be used as samples. You can list those on the same invoice. The ones that they're going to pay for, you're going to put a rate, but the ones that are going to be the samples, you'll put as a $0, so that the grand total of the invoice shows how much they owe. But the invoice shows the grand total that you're shipping. Now, I probably would have put a different memo here. Samples, no charge. There we go. Let's do that. So that it's obvious. I didn't want to do that. Program drives me crazy. So, and the reason it's important to distinguish between the samples that you gave away versus the wine that you sold is because this affects your average case sale price. If we had just listed these samples as FOB, this would have dropped our average case, the case sale price to $4 a bottle instead of $8 a bottle. And it's important to keep that metric of your average case sale price is really important because it's a metric that we track. Now, some of you will have case discounts. And so for example, if you buy 10 cases, you're going to send out a case free. So they're going to get essentially 11 cases for the cost of 10 cases. That's a different scenario than, that's a slightly different story than 10 cases of wine that you're selling plus 1 case for samples. Now, I'm not going to argue, whether or not that extra case is a sample or if you're just selling 11 cases for the price of 10. You can do what works for you, but the key thing is you want to be consistent about how you're recording those transactions. So if you're really counting this extra case as samples, then use the depletion class. But if you're counting it as a price discount, then go ahead and count that as distribution, as an FOB. So in which case you would actually do 24 at $4 a bottle, and you would not have this transaction here. So you can pick which one of those scenarios matches. And I do not want to save this. So no, I do not want to save that. Okay, so that is how you enter. Do I want to leave without saving? Yes, I want to leave without saving. So that's how you're going to enter your distribution sales. Now, getting this information into QuickBooks, capturing the samples and pours is the hardest part of this procedure. And that's because, honestly, the owners are notorious for going in and grabbing some bottles, as they head out to a tasting. So there's 2 things that you're going to want to do. First, you're going to want to hang a clipboard in every location in the winery where wine is stored. And you're going to duct tape a pen to the clipboard and make sure that, everybody writes down on the clipboard what they're taking out, who they are, the purpose for the wine, and of course, what they're taking out. And then you're going to grab those, say once a month, and enter those on a sales receipt in QuickBooks. The other way is to track these in your point of sale program. When you track them in your point of sales program, you want to identify one order type that's specifically for your samples and pours. Depending upon the program that you use, you may have to, you might have to repurpose a class. For example, one of the programs that we use doesn't allow you to customize the classes, but they have like a fax class. Well, nobody faxes their orders in anymore. So we'll repurpose the fax class to be the class that we're going to designate for the samples and pours. Now remember, these, whatever your system calls them, it's the same thing. If you're doing the push-in method, whatever that order type is going to push into your class in QuickBooks. If you're doing the summary method, that order type is going to correlate to your depletion class. So that's the first thing is, designate an order type or whatever your point of sale system calls it that helps you identify these sales as different, or these transactions as different from your tasting room sales, your club sales, and your web sales. Now, the second part is you want to create a couple of customers very similar to our ZZ customer list that that match the reason for the sample. So typically what I see is they'll use the last name sample, and then the first name will be the reason. So you may have a pours sample, you may have a sample, you may have a donation sample. And whatever reasons you want to track, use that name. And that way, when you pull your reports, the first thing is that you can define that customer as having a 100% discount, so that whenever you record that sale or that transaction, it will always be 100% discounted. And again, you get the same benefit of a $0 transaction, but you'll have the depletion reported. And then whatever method you use to bring that information from QuickBooks, it's automatically going to come over with, when you do either your month-end summary or your push-in, because that order type is going to map over to your depletion class. So that's the hardest part, is getting your staff to record these transactions consistently. So sample pours. Now let's see. What have I got here? Where did I skip over? Okay, so yep. So creating the procedures to capture the items is the hardest part. We've got the procedure in your point of sale. And okay, we already talked about distribution and wholesale. Okay, great. All right. So now so you have figured out the procedure that you're going to use to capture this information. And it's very often a combination of point of sale and the clipboard method. Obviously you don't want to duplicate that information. All right. So now the information is now in QuickBooks. And like I said, it is totally fine for you teeny tiny wineries, that don't have staff, to stop the procedure at this point, because you've done the most important step, which is isolating your depletions into one class. So you've got one COGS number, and this COGS number is not messing up the COGS from your other legitimate sales. And from an accounting point of view, this is totally fine. Now, if you have a larger winery and you want to monitor, where is all this COGS going? Like, that's a big number. So I kind of like to know, where is this going? What's causing this number? To do that, we're going to run a report, and I'll show you how to do this report. Yep. Okay. So we're going to create a memorized report. And I call this report the COGS depletion report. So this is a custom summary report. Let me set this up for you. So I'm going to go back to the report list. And so this is a custom summary. Some summary report. There we go. Okay, so we're at a custom summary report. I'm going to pop in my dates, which is going to be 010117, 123117. My rows are going to be by customer, and this is very similar. This process is identical over in desktop. My rows are going to be by customer. My columns are going to be by income statement. And then I'm going to customize. I'm going to customize based on filter. Okay, my distribution accounts are going to be my I actually find it easier if you go all cost of goods sold accounts. I mean, you can handpick wine and merch, but if you go all cost of goods, you're going to be fine. And then class, I'm going to use my depletion class, or whatever class you're going to use. There we go. And I'm going to run my report. And so what you're going to see here now in desktop, this report's a little bit tidier. in desktop, this report is only going to show the COGS wine and the COGS merchandise. So just work with me here because I want to stick with QuickBooks Online, because QuickBooks Online, I don't give enough attention to it. All right. And what you can see here is that these folks recorded a lot of their depletions to their distributors, and in some cases to some customer names. And that's totally fine. This procedure still works because on this transaction, I think we already looked at, on this transaction, they sold sales receipts. Let's go to sales receipt here. Oh, I guess that was all samples. Okay. Anyway, they indicated, some sales and some depletions. All right. But down here, we start to see our ZZ names that we entered from the sales receipts. Okay. And I've already entered my journal entry to reclass this. So once you've entered the journal entry to reclass this, this is what you should see on this report. But let me, if I scooch this back to the 30th, this is what the report looks like without that journal entry. So now I'm going to show you how to enter this journal entry so that you can get this, reclass this. So let me scooch that over. I'm going to take this guy, scooch him over here. All right. So where did I go? All right. So here's my report. So I'm always going to start down here. Tina, and of course there were some samples on. All right, I'm going to have to do this on the 31st. Report. All right, so I always start with these guys down here. So you can see that my donation purpose, I'm going to reclass that to my donation expense account, 40934. My events, 2902. Now, some of you might have a group of expenses for your events. This file does not have that, but I do have, again, my larger wineries will have a whole group on their P&L for events. This file, we're just tracking it to samples and promo. Then we've got pours. Now the pours are going to be reclassed to the tasting room pours, 6,274. And then we've got some samples for 4,6708. And now for the shrinkage is going to be reclassed to COGS wine. And the tricky part with this one is that because our COGS, we do want to have a class. So we're going to pick the other class for that shrinkage. And then they use the TR for whatever reason. We're just going to reclass that to samples and promo. Now, the tricky part is these guys up here, these guys up here, how am I going to do this without deleting this? I really don't want to delete this. You're going to want to get a subtotal for these guys up here. As you can see, these guys are 16. This group here is 16,000. The grand total was 19,000. So this number here was actually 19,492 minus 16,758. This number right here. So this is the last entry for the wine. I'm going to hit my COGS wine. It's 19,492.91, which was the grand total of this report before I entered this journal entry. And the key thing here is this class, you want to hit depletion, because we want to reverse the depletion. And then I'm going to enter another group for my merchandise. So here's my merchandise. And I'm just going to, for my merchandise, I have another expense item called promo non-wine. And this, again, is an important distinction. With your promo, you want the sample and promo account to be only your wine. And this promo will be for stuff that you buy, that you give away as a promo. This is important for your cash flow forecasts and things like that. So I'm going to hit my promo non-wine, and I'm going to again hit my COGS merchandise, and I'm going to hit the depletion class. So once I save this, this entry is going to then show up here. You know what, here, let me scooch this over to another day, and that way you can see what this looks like before I've done this entry. So if I come back here and I come here, run. All right, so this is what the report looked like before I entered my journal entry, and you can see that this to get this number here, 2734, which was all of these random individuals up here, which I didn't get a subtotal for, that was 19,492 minus 16,758. And again, you can do this right here. You can do this right here in the cell, 19,492.91 minus 16,758.87. That got me my 7,27304. And then this number here is exactly that number that I see right there. So now I'm going to scooch this back to December 31st. I'm going to save. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to refresh this. Here's my refresh. And you know that you've entered this transaction correctly when this depletion report, this custom summary report that I made, has zeroed out. Now, when we go back to our P&L, we've lost our P&L. Oh, yeah, that's right. It's here. When we come back to our P&L, we can also see from our P&L that this has entered correctly because, to do this on the 31st, because our depletion class is 0. And that's what, again, if you're doing the journal entry, which is an optional step, your depletion class will end up being 0. And those expenses are now going to show up. Well, actually, I can do it this way. They're going to show up on your expense account. So here's promo non-wine, which apparently you had some other things other than the journal entry. Here's your samples and promo. This COGS other was your shrinkage and some other things. And what else? Sorry, I'm jumping around here. Tasting room. Where's my tasting room? Oh, here's my tasting room pours right there. So this is what your P&L would look like. Whether you reclass this or not, it doesn't affect your bottom line. It only moves this COGS wine for the depletions to an expense account. So again, you can compare it against your budget. So there we go. That is the steps for entering your samples and promo. So again, to recap, you want to identify a class that you're going to use for your samples and promo. You already have your items set up. You are not going to create any extra items. You're going to create some customer jobs to designate the reasons for your samples. And I've got a client whose mom drinks a lot of wine, and she wants to keep tabs on how much mom drinks. She's got mom listed here. So she can see how much she's taken. You can use as many as you want to track. But the minimum that you want to have is pours, samples, and shrinkage. And then you're going to enter a sales receipt. That's a $0 sales receipt using the depletion class. If you have a sample on a distribution or wholesale invoice, you're going to use the depletion class for the sample portion of that invoice. And again, getting this information, tracking this information is the hardest part. You're going to hang clipboards in all your storerooms, and you're going to set up a procedure in your point of sale so that when you do your push in or your month end summary, this information is going to come over automatically. So that is samples and pours. So let's, because I always race through these things, let's open up the lines, and feel free to pop in, either unmute yourself or pop in a question in the chat, and I'm happy to revisit, any procedure that talked about here. Okay. So, All right. Another quiet group out there. Okay. Well, okay, let's see, what did I gloss over? I'm checking my notes here. Well, while you guys are thinking of questions, I want to go back over the shrinkage entry and why. Now, again, the shrinkage entry is important because it trues up what QuickBooks says you sold with your physical count. And I want to just revisit this issue of monitoring, monitoring wine that goes missing, which I don't like calling it theft, but the fact of the matter is wine goes missing. And sometimes it's completely accidental. The crew miscodes a wine. They hit a 2018 instead of 2019 wine or something like that. That's completely innocent. And on your shrinkage, you're going to actually see that. You're going to see that one wine's over and another wine is under. But but the shrinkage transaction is one of the control processes that you want to have in place. If you do have a dishonest person on your staff, they're going to find their way around any control that you have in place, because that's what dishonest people do. Dishonest people look for loopholes. But an honest person, given a situation where there's no controls in place and there's something unusual going on in their world, they will cross the bounds and they will do something that's dishonest. So having control procedures in place keeps your honest staff honest. Those are the ones that we don't want to tempt them into doing something dishonest. And so the shrinkage, having your staff see that you are counting the inventory every quarter, they know that you're watching. And with your shrinkage transaction, you can actually see exactly which wines have gone missing. And if you find that your 95-point wines are the ones that are always going missing, versus your other wines, well, that they're going missing, for a purpose. So, which is, sad to have to know that information, but, you're running a business, can you afford to have your best wine walk out the door? So, that's why I strongly recommend that you count your inventory once a quarter. Again, you also need to count your inventory once a quarter, just because you need to true up QuickBooks. I hear complaints all the time that people say, "Oh, my inventory in QuickBooks is inaccurate." Well, are you entering your samples and pours? Are you entering, are you calculating your shrinkage and entering your shrinkage so that you can get the physical count to match QuickBooks? And that is a process that those of you who are Silver Club members, you'll find in the learning library. We do have videos, lessons on how to do that inventory true up process. Okay, well, so Steph, I'm not seeing any questions.
I haven't seen any come through either. Does anybody have any follow-up questions for Jeanette regarding samples and pours or shrinkage?
Well, gosh, oh golly. All right, well, what I think I'll do, if no questions are coming in, I think maybe I'll just keep going here, because all these folks were so kind to come back. I think I'll just keep talking and give you your full, hours worth that we had planned here. I think what I'll do is I'll walk through the step of how you calculate the how you do the true up, because that is part of the shrinkage process. So to do the inventory true up, what we're going to do is I'm going to run a new report. I'm going to run an inventory report and inventory valuation summary report. And let's just go ahead and do it to June 30th. I have no idea what this report's going to look like. So I'm going to run the report. All right, so here's my inventory. So I'm doing my inventory. I'm going to calculate my shrinkage for June 30th. And this is, yeah, good. This is a nice messy one. All right, I'm going to export this to, oh, yeah, I'm going to, let me see if I can customize this. Yeah. Okay. In desktop, you can exclude those zeros, but in online appears you cannot. Let me go to desktop just because I miss Mr. Desktop. Let's go to desktop. Here we are. All right. So if I go to desktop, oh yeah, actually here, while I'm here, you can see window, where's my journal entry? Okay. Oh yeah. So here's my report for COGS for desktop. Again, this is set up the exact same way as online, but you can see that this report's not quite as messy as the online report, but it's the exact same information. All right. Let's run the inventory report. So I'm going to go reports, inventory valuation summary. And honestly, folks, I run across a lot of people who still don't know that this report exists. So your inventory valuation summary report, I'm going to go 6 because I'm going to true up to last month. And then you've got these awesome buttons up here, hide zero, quantity on hand. And then I'm also going to show inactive inventory items just in case someone has turned them off. And what you can see is in desktop, all those zero accounts are going to go away. All right. And then I'm going to export this to Excel. Now, when you go and do, let me make this a little bigger here. When you go and do, well, before you do your inventory count, I actually will run this report and then I will delete all of these columns here and use this as my counting sheet, because this will save you a giant amount of time having these wines all in the same order and also using the same name. If you just let your crew write down whatever name they feel like writing down, that's not necessarily going to match yours. And it's just going to take doing this step, it's going to just take even longer to do it. So print this out and use this as your counting sheets for your physical count. All right. So you've sent the crew out. They've counted the wine. They're going to count the wine in all the different inventory locations. So let me go back, unhide. And I'm going to do the true up. I'm going to delete all these other columns here. I'm going to leave my on hand, and this is going to be my QuickBooks QB on hand. QB on hand before. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to create a column for every single inventory location. So I've got the warehouse. And maybe you have 2 warehouses. You've got your tasting room. You've got the storage room. And maybe you have the owner's house. Whatever all your different inventory locations are. And then I'm going to get a total. So in these columns, you're going to pop in how much you have in each of those locations. And my total is going to be equals sum. And then copy that down. All right. So let's say I've got 146. All right. Okay. So according to this, I have 146 of these things, which was not a good example, but let's just work with me here. But QuickBooks says I have 144. What that means is I've actually found some wine, but of my 09 cab, let's say I actually only have 60. That means okay. So anyway, okay. So I have 60. I should have 69. That means I've lost some wine. So on our shrinkage, I always put a note to self here. Negative equals loss. Because you can do this formula either direction. You can either, we're going to go total minus, whoops, sorry about that, equals total minus what QuickBooks says I have on hand. So I always have to think through this to make sure that I've got my formula in here correctly. So does this make sense that if I actually have 46, but QuickBooks says I have 144, that means I found 2. And at the same token, I have lost 9 of the cab. So negative does mean a loss. So then I'll copy this down and I'll get a grand total. Now, here's the tricky part. When you enter this into QuickBooks, you need to flip the sign. So this is going to be my QuickBooks entry. It's going to be the opposite of this, minus that. And again, we always have to just think ourselves through this step. Now, notice that this one here, QuickBooks oversold this 08. Well, as of your previous report, you didn't have any of this on hand. You sold 5. So now you have negative inventory. So you essentially, so your QuickBooks entry will be a negative. And because we're entering this on a sales receipt, when you have a negative on a sales receipt, that's actually going to turn out to be a find, which will look like this. So let me do that. Go here. I'm going to go customers, enter a sales receipt. Hang on. Okay, so this is going to be my shrinkage. Nope, I'm going to exclude that. My class is going to be my depletions. This is going to be 063021. And my item is going to be my 12 Zin Taster. And I'm actually going to enter, let me hide some of this out. I'm going to enter -2. And again, my rate's going to be 0. And for my 08 cab, I'm going to enter -5, because on my sales receipt, the negative means I found it. But my 09 cab, I'm going to enter a +9 because we're going to remove 9 from inventory. And that's shrinkage. So I'm just going to hit save on this. And then we go and do a double check. We're going to go back to our inventory valuation summary report. And when I hit refresh, now what I can see is that my on hand is in fact now 146. I have 0 of my 08 cab. If I unhide that, you can see my 08 cab is 0 and my 09 cab is 60. So after you've entered your shrinkage, you rerun your inventory valuation summary report and you compare what this report says with your total number right here. And that tells you that you've entered the shrinkage transaction correctly. So that's the process of entering shrinkage. And we actually, when you review your shrinkage, some numbers are going to jump out at you as being really often goofy. Just go back and recount the locations. Just do a recount on those before you actually enter your shrinkage transaction. Okay, so that's the basic process for truing up your inventory. These reports right here should come straight from your warehouse. These reports here are going to have to be a physical count of what you have. Now, the complication in life is going to be the wines that you've sold to your club members that they have not picked up yet. And your point of sale system should be able to give you a report of all the wines that have not been picked up. Because remember, when you report that sale, QuickBooks is going to remove it from inventory, but you still have it physically on hand. So First of all, check your point of sale program and make sure that you have that report. If you are not able to run a report from your point of sale program on the wines that you sold but have not been picked up, what you're going to have to do is physically put that wine in a completely different location. And then you're not going to count. You're not going to count that information. You're not going to count those wines because those wines have been sold. And that's, a lot of wineries will do that. Well, if you have the space, wineries will do that. Now, if you don't have the space to put that wine aside, then you're going to have to find a method in your point of sale program of tracking, of pulling a report of the wines that were sold but have not been picked up. And then you're going to pop in here, hold for pickup. So, and the number here, you're actually going to put in a negative number. So let's say of this 09 cab, you actually have 2 bottles that were sold to a club member but not picked up. So they are physically on hand in the tasting room, but for the purposes of truing up your inventory, you need to subtract them from this physical count. So you really have 58 bottles available to sell compared to 69. So now your shrinkage is actually 11 bottles that you're short in your wine. So this hold for pickup is also going to be a tricky transaction to manage when you do your inventory true up. So again, whether or not you put those wines in a separate location is going to be completely dependent on your point of sale program and whether or not you can get this report out of your point of sale program. Okay, so that is how you figure out your shrinkage and your QuickBooks entry to true this up. All right, how's it looking out there, Steph? I still don't see any questions coming in.
Yeah, I haven't seen any come in either.
Okay. We look forward to doing these webinars so that we can just talk with people and find out what problems they're running into. Especially with the point of sale programs. There's been a lot of aggravation around point of sale programs lately. So we're seeing a lot of different programs being used. Well, I mean, since I'm talking about inventory and no one's got questions, I'll just keep talking here. I've been having a lot of discussions lately with clients about where to hold, which program should hold the master inventory. And I'm adamant that the master inventory belongs in QuickBooks, even though there's only one location. The master inventory needs to be in QuickBooks. Now, I'm well aware that knowing how much is available to sell is a very important piece of information, excuse me, for your folks and, for your tasting room customers. So what I see is, and what I'm totally fine with is, if your point of sale program has an inventory module, use that number to reflect the wine that is available for your tasting room staff to sell. So you might have withheld some wine. You might have some wine that is physically in storage, but you're withholding it because you're saving it for the next club run. Or you may have some library wines that you really don't want to release at this time. Or maybe you have allocations to your distribution customers. So I would use your point of sale, the inventory module in your point of sale, to reflect the amount of wine that is available for your staff to sell. And you may have to go in and put some inventory adjustments from time to time to true that up. Yeah, I find that it is just very complicated to keep to do all the transactions needed to keep your point of sale accurate as far as the actual number that's on hand. Because remember, we also recommend that you only put your direct to consumer sales in your point of sale program, and your distribution and your wholesale sales, that's all going to be reflected in QuickBooks on invoices. So your distribution sales aren't even going to be in your point of sale program, which means every time you make that sale, you're going to have to go do some sort of transaction over in the point of sale program. So you're just doubling your work if you do that. No, let's see. So the other things, I've still not seen any questions here. I think I've mentioned before that QuickBooks Enterprise does have an add-on feature of having multiple inventory locations. And I do have clients who have upgraded to QuickBooks Enterprise. It's a much more expensive program so that they can get multiple inventory locations. But I will tell you right off the bat that not one of those clients is able to keep those locations accurate and useful. It takes a lot of extra time to true up every single location. And because it takes so much time to true it up, the information is not useful. So why do the extra step? They tend to go to the if they want to see how much wine they have available, they just pull up the warehouse report and go off of that. They don't even bother to use QuickBooks. So don't spend the time to true that up if you're not even going to use the report. So I'm a big proponent of the fact that the one inventory location in QuickBooks is all you need. And when you true it up, you're going to lay out a worksheet like this, and record your shrinkage. And if you have staff that you want to, again, the busier the winery and the more staff that you have on hand, then you have more complicated problems. Like let's say you've got a national sales manager who only has a certain allocation to sell. Well, there are other procedures to put into place other than turning on the multiple inventory locations. So don't overcomplicate things. Things are complicated enough without adding on extra procedures. Okay, so while we're winding down, we've got 5 minutes to go here. I'm totally fine with answering any other questions that you folks might have about anything, even if it's not samples related. Again, appreciate your coming back, and we'll work on getting our emails a little bit better. Better set up in the future. So anything coming up for you folks? All right, well, I should mention that our next webinar, let me flip back to my slides here. There we go. All right, so these are your basic steps that you want to put into place in order to handle your samples and pours. And if you want to learn more about our procedures, our Discover QuickBooks for Wineries mini course that gives an overview of the Fundamental 5 and of our process. If you want to set up your file, we have a course. Whoops, sorry about that. Our Fundamental 5 course, this is our foundational program that walks you through step-by-step how to set up the Fundamental 5. And we have videos for both desktop and QuickBooks Online. If you then want to learn about the costing book process, we have the costing book checklist course. And coming up, oh shoot, sorry, I forgot to change the slide. Sorry, we're not very good at these things. We're better at QuickBooks. Coming up in August, Stephanie, what's that date? August 19th. We're going to be having
August 19th.
another training. The third webinar in our summer training series will be on recording grapes. And I see all kinds of crazy spreadsheets out there that are never accurate. And I've got I think, pretty straightforward method of recording these in QuickBooks. So we always have this information available and we don't have to rely on Excel. Now, y'all know that I love Excel, but I use Excel to do calculations. I use QuickBooks to store the main information. And then I pull a report from QuickBooks and then I'll massage it from that point. So that's what's coming up in August. And then, of course, the other place to learn more is joining our Silver Club, where we have a learning library. We have a whole history of mini lessons, quickies, full lessons.
Office hours.
Office hour recordings. And then we're also, when you post a question in the Q&A in the forum, I've been doing video answers, so I can actually show you what we're talking about. And just really excited that we've been able to, provide that level of service to get these questions answered for you, because we know this is complicated stuff. And what we try to do is teach you the basics, and so that we can streamline your procedures so that you just capture the information that's critical without going through extra steps. I do see a lot of folks out there who are doing a lot of extra steps, and we want to try to stop that and get the essential information entered into QuickBooks. And that's why we have the procedures and the system that we've set up. So, Stephanie, did I?
Yeah, I think the only other thing I would probably add is, again, just thank you for your patience. We will plan to post the recording for this webinar on both our website under the blog header, as well as on our YouTube channel. And we will try to have that up early next week. You will see a follow-up email, I believe, go out on Monday that will have the link to the recording as well. So just wanted you to know that that would be available to you.
So thank you, everyone, for joining us, and hope to catch you next month when we talk about recording grapes. And stay cool, and let's hope we have an awesome harvest season this year. Let's hope that we've got lots of grapes to record.
Yes.
We need a good harvest. All right. Stay safe.
Thank you.